how does one take the middle way in regards, for example, to food? We should eat enough to have energy for all our daily duties, but when we are not sure what is enough, we should rather eat more than less, because negative effects from restraining are more destructive than negative effects from indulging ourselves. Is this right?
Well, I think it depends on what you're doing, because obviously you're still living in the world, and I think that would make it easier to judge how much you need, really, because if you're doing that, it's not like every time you eat you have to sit down and have this whole meal. You could eat small things at various times instead, and I think that would make it a lot easier to regulate how much you take in and see how much you really need. Unless you're keeping 8 precepts, then you have to eat before noon. But I don't know, indulging or overly restraining can be bad. I think it's going to be a matter of experimentation, really. You just have to realize how much energy you're using during the day and eat accordingly. Simple enough.
Yeah, I had the same thought that when you are working, you have another need for calories or for nutriments than when you're just sitting and meditating. So as a lay person, you need more food, and you need eventually a third meal. When you're a meditator here on a retreat, one meal could be enough, or 2 meals. When you're on 8 precepts and you have to work and you feel hungry, then something like a juice or so in the afternoon helps to overcome that hunger, or that feeling of getting dizzy or getting nervous. Before I ordained, I thought I need 3 meals. I need to eat a lot, and I found out that I'm fine with 1 meal when I am in meditation retreat, and 2 meals when I'm doing duties. So it's happening in the mind as well, that you think you really need it. You may have a little bit hunger in the evening when you start to get for 2 or 1 meals, but after a while you will find that this is nothing bad.
For sure. I have a couple of things to say, sort of corollaries. I think the question's already been answered, but first of all, to make clear that there are negative effects from indulging. That may not be clear. Food is a lot more dangerous than we make it out to be, or than we actually realize. Because a lot of food will have an effect on your brain chemistry as well, a lot of rich food and fatty food and so on. Obviously you have negative effects from restraining, in terms of the weakness that comes from it. Now, if you're living an ordinary life, if you're living a life in the human world, human society, then you need to do work, you need to think, you need to act, you need to speak. And so not having enough food can be dangerous in that regard. But in terms of our spirituality, it's really more, I would say, the other way, that indulging is actually a lot more dangerous. It leads to lust, or it supports lust to get stronger in the mind. It supports laziness to get stronger in the mind. It doesn't create these things in the mind, but because of the brain chemistry and the processes in the body and the blood flow and so on required to digest food and the chemicals that are added to the body, these feelings become stronger. This is why in the Buddha's time everyone was starving themselves, because when they starved themselves, or all the spiritual people, because when they starved themselves, these feelings just went away totally, and they thought they were enlightened. Wow, I don't get greedy at all, because there's no chemicals left to have lust arise, for the hormones to work. No, that's not the way out of suffering, but it points very much to the problem with going the other way, is that you're developing an incredible amount of these states. Now, the other thing I wanted to say is and it relates to the necessity to eat food in life in society, is that the question is, what is the food for? And this is a question that especially monks and meditators are not very clear on and often miss. So people think, they will see the effects of eating less than they're used to, in terms of maybe their wounds don't heal as quickly, maybe they don't have as much energy, they can see their muscles atrophying, their muscles getting smaller, maybe they're losing the color, and the beauty in their face is getting thin, and they can see the bones sticking out of their shoulders. And this and a million other things are excuses that people come up with to eat more. Right? And this is what constantly I was getting in Los Angeles, for example. You're too thin, you have to eat more, you're not eating enough, and so on. And the question is, enough for what? Because the Buddha's idea of eating enough is enough to live, enough to survive. If the food that you're eating is not enough for you to survive on, and not enough for you to carry out your duties correctly, then it's not enough. But if the food you eat is enough for you to carry out your duties, if with the food you eat you can walk back and forth, 5 hours a day and do 5 hours of walking meditation, then I would say that's enough food. And that's really not a lot of food, because you're walking quite slowly. So you do 5 hours of walking, 5 hours of sitting, or 6 hours of walking, 6 hours of sitting. That's enough to live. Anything that you have to do apart from that, if you have to teach, if you have to work in the monastery, if you have to then go out and work in society, then you add on to that extent. With this food, can I live? Can I survive? Because that's really the point. The monk and the monastic is the ideal, or the perfect example of the bare minimum of requirements. So we eat because we need the food. We wear clothes because we need something to cover our bodies. We have shelter because we need something to protect against the rain, or also to give us solitude, and so on. And we take medicine so that we don't suffer from horrible, painful feelings that are going to leave us or drive us crazy, even that are going to hurt our meditation practice or disrupt our meditation practice. So, point being, as Palanyani also said, we need far less than we think that we need. And when you really think about what do I need this food for, you realize that you really need a lot less than you think. And the point is that we, rather than using this as a guide, we always will use things like hunger as a guide, or partiality as a guide, right? I know I only need maybe some crackers, and cheese, and that's enough. But chips are better, right? So I'll have chips instead. Or I know that I've had enough food, but I'm still hungry, so I'll go out and eat more, and we'll eat until we're not hungry. This is our measure. I had a friend when I was younger, and he became a biologist, became a veterinarian actually, And he once told me that the way this gland works in the brain, the hunger gland works, it's always firing. Its nature is to fire and say, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, constantly. That's its ordinary state, and it's only by putting a whole bunch of food to make it shut up. You know, this somehow it gets something, and then it switches off. And then when the food disappears, it turns back on and starts saying, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry again. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your level of health or your physical requirements or even how much food you have in your stomach. You can have enough food in your stomach to survive, and yet it hasn't hit this gland yet, and so it's still saying, eat more, eat more, eat more. I'm hungry. Something we don't realize, hunger is not an indication that we have to eat more. It's not a perfect indication that we have to eat more. It's also something that has evolved biologically. It's not a spiritual gland. This gland is not our spiritual friend. If anything, it's a product or a produced by Mara in the factories of Mara, because it tends to tell us we have to eat more and more and get fat and save up for the winter or save up for the times when we have no food. How evolution has led us to have this gland. It has nothing to do with any sort of spiritual development. So a big point in learning how to find the middle way in regards, as the example you give, food, is to stop listening to hunger and just be rational and understand how much food you need. Okay, yeah, sure, when you're starving, have some food, but don't use the hunger as a guide. And this is apparent when you come to practice meditation, because you'll find you've eaten enough, you don't need more, and yet in the evening you're still going, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. And I've had meditators tell me, in the evening I was so hungry. They'll complain about it the first days, and you tell them, say, hungry, hungry, and they're, come on, I'm hungry, I need more food. And then they'll finally try it, and they'll come back and tell you that it's amazing. Last night I was so hungry, I thought, I need some food, I'm going to die here, I can't stay here another day. And so, but finally I said to myself, hungry, hungry. Woke up in the morning, I wasn't hungry at all. And they're able to see that actually it's just their body playing games with them because they're used to eating. And because they're used to eating, the mind says, it's time for dinner, where's my dinner? And the gland starts working.